In this episode of Ricky Remembers the discos in Metro Manila in the late 80s and up until the mid 90s. Let me qualify that. Ricky remembers the discos in the late 80s up until the mid 90s, because I know there was this whole scene back in the 70s, like a Go-Go Banana and all of that. Of course, I can't speak about those places. I wasn't even born yet. So I'm just gonna talk about the discos in Metro Manila in the late 80s up to the mid 90s. But before I get to that, I just want to give a shout out to my friend, my very good friend, Karen Tayao. She was the one who suggested this topic, and she also called me out yesterday because she noticed my videos were just a little shaky. They were a little shaky, so she told me to invest in a tripod, which I did. So I bought a couple of tripods from Amazon. I'll put the link to the tripod that I bought in the description below. I also want to talk about the video yesterday. I got a lot of comments about Kimpura and Kamameshi House. I completely forgot about those two when I talked about Japanese restaurants in Metro Manila yesterday. So yesterday, Ricky remembered the Japanese restaurants, and I failed to mention Kimpura in Green Hills and Kamameshi House out in West Avenue. Those were really popular, and they still are very popular. So I apologize for that. Thank you to Gold Rodriguez, who called me out on that, and also Leon Victor Uy. I used to work with Leon in Group M, so thanks for bringing up Kamameshi House also. So if you remember something that Ricky doesn't remember or that I don't remember, just comment in the comments below and I'll include it in the next video, or I'll add it to the next video so that everyone can remember as well as everyone does. So let's get back to today's topic. Ricky remembers the discos in Metro Manila in the 80s up until the mid 90s. So my first exposure to discos back in the day was when I was staying with my cousins. Again, these are my popular cousins, my famous popular cousins, the Ignacios and the Magsaysays. I would stay over with them, and they were teenagers already, and I remember they would go to Kudos. Does anybody else remember Kudos? Kudos, the experience. I've never actually been there. In fact, I have no idea where it is, but I remember my cousins freaking out over going to Kudos every weekend. So Kudos, the experience, was the first time I heard about a disco that teenagers or my older cousins would go to. Kudos, the experience. And then after that, I think Kudos became Equinox or Club Cocoon, but I think they're the same. I could be wrong. Please correct me or please remind me of what happened to Kudos, but I think it evolved into Club Cocoon or Equinox. Of course, you can't discuss discos in Metro Manila without mentioning Euphoria. Euphoria Disco. So Ricky remembers Euphoria Disco for sure. That was the disco in the Intercon Hotel in Ayala. Well, of course, the Intercon is not even there anymore, but the disco or the in-house disco in the Intercon Hotel was Euphoria. I remember Euphoria very well because in the mid 90s, early 90s, VJ Noni, Winona Tao, or MTV VJ Winona Tao visited Manila for the first time, and they had the party in Euphoria. And I was there with my friend Gino Bagsit. So we wanted to see Noni Tao or VJ Noni so badly in person. So we went over to Euphoria to see that. And I know that Euphoria used to be called something else before in the yikes, I'm gonna make a mistake here. Either it was the 70s or the 80s, or maybe even the 80s, but it was called something else. My God, I read it somewhere. It was something like what's up or something, or anything goes or something like that. Oh my God, I'm gonna get flack for this, but Euphoria used to be something else, and it was popular too. Of course, there's Euphoria, and then there's Mars Disco. Of course, Red Hot Planet Mars. Um, Over there in was it Pasay Road? What do you call that street where Mars used to be? It was in the corner. It was in the entrance of. Is it like? What is the name of that village? Where there's a subdivision and Mars is at the corner. Is at the gate. San Lorenzo Village. There you go. San Lorenzo Village is where Red Hot Planet Mars used to be. That was also a very popular disco back in the day, and everybody lined up to get into Red Hot Planet Mars. Very popular, and it was so hard to get into. I remember that so well, how hard it was to get there, but it was a really happening place. So you had Kudos, you had Euphoria, and then you had Red Hot Planet Mars. It's amazing how there were so many discos during that time in such a small area of the city. There were so many people, or there were so many discos already. And of course, there's also Faces Disco. If you watch the PBA a lot during that period, the late 80s, there was always a commercial for Faces, because apparently the owner of Faces Disco was a part owner of Vintage Enterprises as well. Bernardino, something Bernardino was the name of the owner of Faces, and they advertised in the PBA all the time as well. So I never actually got inside or went inside Faces, but only up until when I was in college. I remember I was a freshman in college, and I was rehearsing a play in the University of the Philippines, and some of the older students there who were also in the play, Andoy Ranay, Harleen Bautista, and Tax Rutacchio, and Patricia Valenzuela were the ones who went with me, or we went together, or I just joined their group. We went to Faces Disco, and I went in there for the very first time. That was Faces Disco. It was in, oh my God, what is that street? But it's where the Ayala Museum is now, or where Greenbelt is now. That used to be Faces Disco. But that's just the Makati area, okay? In Quezon City, the discos were, and Ricky remembers these discos, Jealousy in Quezon Avenue. I don't know if anybody else will remember it as Jealousy, because it evolved into Jaloo or Jaloo. Somewhere in the 90s, Jealousy became Jaloo. And then there was also Rumors Disco. And then there was Heartbeat Mega Disco. Heartbeat Mega Disco is also in Quezon Avenue. Jealousy or Jaloo was in Quezon Avenue, or is in Quezon Avenue, or was in Quezon Avenue. Sorry, they're not there anymore. And then Ozone Disco out in Tomas Morato. In fact, we were there when Ozone burned down. It was somewhere 94 or 95. I remember exactly who I was with. I was with Stella Cañete. We were in Timog. I think we came from Sharkies during that time, but we came from a rehearsal from a play, and there was a commotion right in front of Ozone. There were a lot of people, there were a lot of vehicles, and apparently it had burned down already, or it had burned down, but we didn't know how tragic it was. We didn't know how many people died in that tragic accident, or that tragic incident, but Ozone Disco is part of that scene. And it might just be that Ozone burning down signaled the end of discos in Metro Manila. After that, it just wasn't popular anymore. Of course, everyone's parents started worrying and maybe told everyone or reminded everyone not to go to the discos anymore, and that was the end of it. So that was the end of an era, I would say. So to recap all of that, Ricky remembers the discos in the late 80s and up until the mid 90s. So that's Ricky remembers Kudos, Ricky remembers Euphoria, Ricky remembers Red Hot Planet Mars, Ricky remembers Faces, Ricky remembers Heartbeat, Mega Disco, Jealousy or Jaloo, and of course Ozone Disco. So that's our episode for today. This is the first time I'm videoing or taping an episode at night. So I'm here at the lovely city of Fullerton. I'm about to have dinner. I'm about to have some ramen here in Copen Ramen. So please, if some of what I said is incomplete or some of them are incorrect, please drop me a comment below and I'll address that in the next video. And then also don't forget to subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button and clicking on the notification bell as well, so that you get notified every time there's a new video. Thank you. That's your episode for the day, and thank you for tuning in. This is Ricky Remembers. See you again tomorrow and see you again next time. Bye. Thanks.